Hi, this is Russ Walden with Father's Heart Ministry. Well, I knew the day would come. It has come before. This is the day that I get in trouble with the counsels of the uninformed. As I thought about that, I heard this song from the radio, I don't care. Why? Because I have the word of liberty for you. I got the joy of the Lord today. My joy is seeing you set at liberty. Listen, God says this to you today. You are coming out from under the measure of man into the limitlessness of God. Let me say that again. You are coming out from under the measure of man into the limitlessness of God. What am I talking about? I read two verses to start off. Genesis chapter 13, verse 4. First of all, we're going to see what Abraham is doing. In verse 11, we're going to see what happens because of it. In verse 4 of Genesis 13, we see that Abraham builds an altar, and it said he called upon the name of the Lord. So here's Abraham in a wilderness, and he has built an altar called Tabarabasata, and he's calling upon the name of the Lord. And he's moving out from under the limitlessness of his situation, some of it imposed because of his connection to his nephew Lot. And what does that have to do with you? It has everything to do with you, beloved. Keep listening. It said that Abraham, in verse 11, there's contention between them. And then it says that Lot said they separated themselves one from another. And I heard the Lord say, it's time to separate yourself from your lot. Now, you may not have a nephew named Lot, but let me tell you what Lot's name means. And this is where I lose all the religious mentalities. Look up the Hebrew word for Lot, and it means covering. Covering. There are those of you that have been under a concept of covering. I'm not saying dispensing with accountability, but there are those of you that have been laboring under a concept of accountability that has quenched what God is seeking to do in your life. Jesus made a statement in Matthew chapter 5, verses 15 and 16. Jesus says, you don't light a candle. And he's talking about the candle of God on the inside of you. You do not light a candle and put it under a bushel. You don't take what God has fired up on the inside of you and put it under a bushel. Well, what are you talking about, Brother Walden? That word bushel, if you look it up in the Greek, it means a certain dry measure. You ever been in, does that sound like some situations you've been in? Maybe some church situations or other accountability situations where they've got it all framed and shaped, but it's a certain dry measure. It might be moistening everybody but you, but for you, it's a certain dry measure. A lot of ladies with an anointing go through this thing. God is bringing you out from under the certain dry religious measure of man into the limitlessness of God. Well, where am I going? Well, Abraham went out, he knew not where. Worked out pretty good for him, didn't it? He went out, he knew not where. He just knew he was looking for a city whose builder and maker was God, and that's a city without walls. That's not a certain dry measure. He said, so let your light shine. In other words, he's trying to tell us we need to pay attention to the certain dry measure that impedes the shining of the light of God and the anointing of God and the unfolding of your destiny. You're coming out from under the certain dry measure of man into the limitlessness of God. Does that resonate with you? Does that bless you? Make this faith work by love, by sharing this word with someone who needs it. And then mix it with faith by sowing into the word. And then go to Father, using the text to give information, or go to fathersheartministry.net and then subscribe to the daily prophetic word, because that's one of the mechanisms by which I can become the prophet in your life. 2 Chronicles 20:20. Believe the prophet, so shall you prosper. And that word means come to breakthrough. You got to know what you're breaking out of if you're going to break into all that God has for you. You're coming out from under. You're breaking out. This is your breakout time from under the measure of man.